So for the first time, I played a tiny bit off camera, which is to say I loaded up materia. I put lightning all on cloud, fire elemental on armor. I gave Tifa one offensive bit of magic and otherwise kept her not lowering her offensive stats. And I put restore all on Nanaki and some offensive spells. And now we're gonna do this quite fun part. Got to figure out which button is which, but I think that shouldn't be too hard to do. And all I need to know is square and circle. So it might take me a sec to figure those out on my keyboard. Okay. That's that way, that's that way. Okay. They're even to the same side of each other on the keyboard. Hey, I hit someone. Oh, I'm doing pretty well, actually. I did give the heads up that I'm not good at this. But it's a weird mini game. It's all clunky and uncomfortable. Like it's hard to get a sense of exactly where the hitboxes are, the movement is. For me at least. Struggling. Can't hit anyone. I was doing well. I mean, not that this is a difficult section. God, I was doing great, I think. I was looking all skilled. And now... just can't take out the reds. Really can't. Oop, meant to go the other way. Alright, we got someone. I knocked him out without slashing him. Okay. Anyway, it's not that this part's hard, or I've never, seen anyone lose it, but it's nice to feel skilled, And I think that might be the first red one I've actually successfully hit so far. Not one of the elite mini games. I like that this game has a lot of different mini games. I think I can never hit anyone at this angle. I think a lot of them aren't very good, but by sheer numbers, the game pulls off having a nice minigame feature, which would normally be weird to me, because normally I'd think distracting yourself from the game like that would hinder it quite substantially. But the way it places most of them in one location and separates them, I think it actually ends up pulling it off, despite the minigames not being very good. There's a timing basketball game that's just can you hold it for exactly, 1.2 seconds or whatever. Okay, so we're getting back attacked. I always fake run at the start of a back attack to try to direct me towards them so I don't get the back attack damage. I'm not sure it works. I think in some games it reduces it, in some games it doesn't. That said, this is a machine, so we know that fire is not the way to go. Also, we're not going to be able to poison it. Oh, I wanted to mention that I think there were a few things I've missed so far or forgot about that were interesting ways to play that I didn't access. So the first one is Apps, the boss in the sewer, is weak to fire. I think I used fire attacks but didn't explicitly note that weakness. The second is in the train graveyard. We could have stole a striking staff for Eris. I did mention this, but I didn't see the enemy or didn't recognize the enemy that you steal it from. That's okay. I've certainly missed... let's save that. I've certainly missed a bunch of... let's actually steal from this. I don't think it has anything, but I've certainly missed a bunch of posters for random side quests that I never pay attention to. Bolt does a lot here. I think we will heal with Piggyman. Yeah, bosses tend not to be the enemies to steal from in this game. It tends to be much more focused on finding the right random enemy, which is curious, because if you think about FF9 or some other games in the series, usually bosses have the things worth stealing, and other enemies might occasionally have something minor, but it's going to be mostly bosses. And FF7 kind of works the other way. I think the one other big thing I forgot was... Rufus is weak to poison. You can poison him. And I had thought when getting the poison materia, the next boss might be weak to poison. Then I saw it and kind of remembered it wasn't. But that made me forget that actually poison is a pretty useful thing on a lot of bosses in this game. And we're going to try to fight an optional boss, probably this episode. And I will be relying on poison, I think, if we should prove successful. God, that was terrible. If you get 3 misses on the slots, then the move is cancelled and doesn't keep going. So if you just get hits, it's fine. You'll do decent damage. If you get Yaz, you get essentially like criticals to it, bonuses to the damage. We can just see how much more damage Bolt is doing than anything else here. All right, who will we need to heal next? Probably Red. Just hitting elemental weaknesses makes a pretty large difference on this admittedly not super difficult fight. Is there anything else I missed? Trying to think through the different parts. No, I think poisoning Rufus was the thing I wish I had done. Again, not that fight proved particularly scary. I healed once and then we just cast Bolt a bunch. But casting Bio there would have been more effective. And it's nice to like pick the most efficient kind of strategy. And after this fight, actually, we have left Midgar and left the opening part of the game. So I think it's a nice intro to the game in that we're introduced to a bunch of gameplay mechanics and all, some materia combinations, generally simple ones, but some tools. We meet our core cast of characters. We have a number of mysteries going on. Who is Sephiroth, to just respond to what's on screen? What is Eris being an ancient or Cetra? What does that matter? We have the threat of Shinra. We have clearly the threat in Cloud's mind, at least, of Sephiroth. We have the work Avalanche is doing. We have a really awful thing that was done by Shinra, destroying Sector 7 and putting the blame on Avalanche. We have a nice sequence in Shinra Tower that is a nice action sequence to conclude the chapter of the game. Yeah, I think it's a strong opening. I quite like it. Well, what do we do now? Sephiroth is alive. I have to settle the score. And that'll save the planet. We also get some comic relief at various points and some interesting thoughts by characters. And that'll save the planet. Seems like it. Alright, I'm going. And we have 2 main threats right now. Rufus and Sephiroth. Unclear which is larger at this point. I'll go too. I have things that I want to find out. About the Ancients. Many things. I guess this is goodbye, Midgar. Nanaki doesn't get a goodbye to Midgar, but I guess he wouldn't want one, right? This is not a place with good memories for Nanaki. I'm going back to my hometown. I'll go with you as far as that. Our least committed party member. I guess this is the start of our journey. Maybe our most committed party member. Let's check. Does she want to go? It's dangerous. Do you want to go? But it should be alright if you keep your promise. Did make a promise to protect her. What's Eris gotta say? You know what? This is the first time I've ever left Midgar. Well, that's the same question. I thought you'd say that. It's a better response, I think. We told Eris's mom to go somewhere safe, so Marlene should be safe too. Yeah, she should be. She said she didn't want to stay in Midgar anymore. Maybe it's for the best. Alright, let's go. Then, let's go. We need a group leader for our journey. Of course, only me could be the leader. You think so? It would have to be Cloud. Hey, I think Barrett would make a good leader. Shit, alright. Go northeast to a town called Calm. Something happens, we'll meet up there. Besides, we can't have 5 people strolling down the fields. It's too dangerous. Split us into 2 parties. The game is designed for 3-character parties, so it just announces that anything else wouldn't make sense, when obviously it'd be totally fine. Anyway, we got our core party. I think actually at this point, Barrett and Eris are probably just slightly better characters than the 2 I've chosen. Eris's heal is clearly very powerful effect. and Barrett has a little more HP than the other characters. Probably Tifa's the weakest character right now, but I think that will change pretty quickly. Barrett says later at Calm, that will be our first destination. Now, we have the enemy skill materia, so if we get hit by certain moves, we can learn them. And there is an enemy around here that can use this, and I think we may as well pick this up. I think in the area. We're finally on the world map. First access to the world map. Oops, I'm going to sneeze. I will pause for a sec. Congrats to me for successfully not recording that sneeze. Bandits are annoying. Bandits can legitimately steal stuff. We may as well cast Bolt. It's going to hit everyone. And, you know, it sucks losing items, even if it's like potions that you would never use. So we're going to try to finish these off quickly. These are not the enemies I was looking for. What they'll do is they will steal from you, and then they will try to run away. Now, sure, does a bronze bangle matter? No. But now we get our bronze bangle back. And we'll probably sell it at some point for some minor amount of gil. Quite shortly, actually, when we get to Calm. So, the enemy skills, you can learn various ones. Some are, like, really useful. Some have really niche use. And some, I can mess around with camera angles. And some, I would say, are pretty useless. But a bunch of the ones that appear not great have really specific uses. So for instance, there's a boss that kind of looks like a robot chicken that has two really dangerous... I think this is the enemy. That is two really dangerous things it does. And a lot of people, especially their first playthrough, and certainly my first playthrough, it was the boss I had by far the most trouble with. I died over and over and over. Just waiting to see if it will use the move. May as well sense it, see what life it's at, see if I should throw out more attacks without killing it. Devil Ride. So I'm trying to get a move called Matra Magic. No, I don't think this is it. I think it's little things that look like rocket launchers that use it. Where was I? Oh, the robot chicken. So the robot chicken's a like tricky boss that can do a lot of damage quickly. It has two major dangerous things. And there's a move that drains MP from enemies. And for most of the game, it's not that useful, but you hit that boss with that move twice, and that boss cannot use its all-hitting attack. That was the huge problem for me. Or at least among the huge problems. Here's the enemy. So I would bolt all, but we want to keep them alive until they... because they're machines, until they use the move we're looking for. Not rocket launchers, machine guns. There's our move. So, Matra Magic is not an incredibly powerful move, but, it hits all, and it is cheaper MP cost per... So we currently have like level 1 Bolt. As the game goes on, we'll get level 2 Bolt. I believe it is something like Bolt 1.5 damage to all enemies for much cheaper MP than Bolt 2 would cost kind of thing. So this is a fairly efficient hit all enemies spell, and it's nice to pick those up when we get the chance. So all we have to do is have it cast on us, and we learn it. So now we have Matra Magic. And there will be a few more things like that I'm going to try to pick up over the course of the game, but I'm not going to be too fussed about it. This is the town Calm, our first town other than Midgar, much smaller. No location we go to will ever be anything like Midgar in size. I really am not sure why I'm talking like this, because I'm sure 100% of people watching this have already played the game, so comments like that don't make sense. I just like talking about things and explaining them. Looks like we've reached Calm. Everyone's waiting at the inn. Let's go, Cloud. Now, I forget if the game forces me to go in, but I'm going to explore the town if it doesn't. Sweet. Right. We've seen this character before. Or at least someone who looked like them. Oh, come on, listen to me. Got anything interesting to say? Apparently not. I haven't really explored random houses before, but I feel like at this point in the game, they start having a lot more items in them than they did in Midgar. And there's definitely a few random items in Midgar and things I should have explored and picked things up in. But Midgar's so big, I get much more explory, though I guess it comes in small chunks at a time. But for some reason, I start I'm curious if anyone else is like this. I start like opening all those little doors and just checking around for items much more aggressively once we leave Midgar. But I think the rewards are also just much... There's so many rewards specifically in Shinra HQ, or little things to find. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just wrong here. But this is how I play the game. Nice little windy stairway to have in your house. Peacemaker. I believe if we check our inventory, that's not how to check. That is a gun. Yeah. So this is sort of the game telling us early on, and it's not a gun that has the symbol for a Barrett's equipment. So this is the game telling us there's going to be more characters. And this is actually a kind of interesting one for the game to tell us that on, because the gun-wielding character here is optional. Don't think there's anything here. We could talk to people, but and sometimes I do. But I'm sort of saving my voice. It's weird how voice use when you're reading, I think, is more tiresome on the voice. Is it true that Shinra made a monster? Oh, it's true. No, either way, as long as we're using the reactor, we can't stand up to Shinra. That is true. You do not have the means, but we perhaps do. This guy is actually quite important. The world's at peace, all's well. If you come back here later, I think he is the one who gives you just like some of the ultimate materia in the game if you do certain things to get it, if you bring him certain items. I think it's that guy. Shops are up top. I forget what's down here. Don't think anything of too much importance for us. But it's nice starting to enter the outside world. Often games slow down a bit at this point as you're given free rein to explore. And we can get hypers. We're going to buy 11 hypers. And I'm going to buy a tent just in case we need to heal MP at some point. Hypers give us fury status, we take more damage, but our limit breaks a little faster, and that tends to be how I like playing this game. If the game was harder, I think sadness might end up being better, because you might need the reduction to damage taken. Is earth magic any good? I never really find great uses for it. Heal magic is for healing status effects. Again, I don't think it's that valuable. We already have 2 senses. We have steel. I don't think we need any of this. As I recall, nothing that's very important is weak to earth. So because we stole the hard edge for Cloud, he is already ahead of the next level of weapons we could buy. But we should upgrade our other characters. And Nanaki already has a weapon of this level. At some point, I'll remember to sell stuff. I guess we can't equip Tifa yet because she's not currently in the party. And let's go enter a whole bunch of scenes. This is probably the game's longest sequence of pure scenes. So I started playing another game and recording commentary on it, and I don't know if I've put those videos up from it or not, but I love this game called The Banner Saga, much less well-known game, and I wanted to talk about it. And that game is much easier to play and talk about, because either something story-wise is always happening for me to read, or the combat is much more important, consistent decision making. And I think it's easier to comment on a game like that than it is to comment on a game like FF7, where there's of course downtime as you run through areas doing fights. There's a lot of time when there is not something immediately happening. And I guess that's why a lot of like fun to watch Let's Playing is, pairs of people so they can be bouncing off each other during that downtime, or are like responding to the Twitch comments or whatever, which I never find appealing. I always find that uninteresting, but it does fill up that time reasonably well that is otherwise difficult to fill up. Anyways, we've got a lot of scenes here. Let's get to them. Mr. Cloud, your party is waiting for you on the 2nd floor. Or is speedrun stuff where there really are so many decisions so quickly and so many things to know how to do well that it's really interesting to constantly discuss. Cloud, you're late. I did go run around town. Yo man, you're late. Thanks, you did both need to tell me. Sorry to keep you waiting. Guess everyone's here now. So, let's hear your story. You know, the one about Sephiroth and the crisis facing the planet. Let's hear it all. I'm on board. Let's hear it. I used to want to be like Sephiroth, so I joined Soldier. After working with Sephiroth on several missions, we became friends. You call that a friend? Yeah, well, he's older than me, and he hardly ever talked about himself. So I guess you'd call him a war buddy. We trusted each other, until one day. One day? After the war, it was Soldier's duty to put down any resistance against the Shinra. That was 5 years ago. So this was the Wutai War, and then the aftermath of the war was still essentially warlike activities. I was 16. Sure is raining hard. We're now in a flashback. We have Sephiroth. This is, I think, our first actual sighting of Sephiroth, but you can pretty easily guess who he is of the 5 characters on screen. Someone driving a truck and 2 other Shinra soldiers in the truck. Sure is raining hard. Hey, how are you doing? Says to a random soldier. Waves. I'm alright. I wouldn't know. Never had motion sickness. Oh, aren't you cool, Cloud? Everything okay? Checks in on everyone, sees they're doing badly, they pretend they're doing alright, and you go, eh, well, I've never been sick, screw you. Yeah. Stay in character. Everything okay? They don't respond. He walks away. Sure thing. Hey. Settle down. They gave me some new materia. Cloud's so eager. Can't wait to use it. He's so much better at doing exercise than when I had to do it to try to win the wig. Just like a kid. That stopped me. You gonna brief us about this mission? This isn't a typical mission. I'm not getting the sense of them being particular buddies at this point. This isn't a typical mission. Good. Why do you say that? I joined Soldier so I could be like you. But by the time I made first class, the war was already over. My big hopes of becoming a hero like you ended with the war. That's why I always sign up whenever there's a big mission, kind of a way to prove myself. So we're already, I did say stay in character, Cloud, but we're already seeing an arc with this character, right? We have this flashback. We have the promise with Tifa, where Cloud is very, I'm going to be in Soldier. I'm going to be a hero just like Sephiroth. I'm going to be Soldier first class. I'm going to be that hero, right? He's the little kid who has dreams of militant glory. Then we jump forward to here. Now he's 16. He is Soldier first class. He's really excited to be on a mission. He thinks he's being supportive to the lesser troops, but he's not really doing it. He's very ready to go, really wants to prove himself, really excitable. And, you know, Sephiroth, the veteran here, is going, come on, kid, sit down. But we're really excited about it. And then we have the present day. But I think we have 2 versions of the present day as well. We have the one we saw at the very beginning of the game, where he's very much, I don't care, I'm a mercenary, pay me my money. I don't care about Soldier, but I don't care about the planet either. I'm done with all of it, right? So there's something in between where he goes from this excitable, hero-worshipping kid to this jaded version of I just want to get paid, nothing matters kind of nihilism. And now we're sort of starting to step a little past that too. We have a bunch of that still, I think. But he is starting to tell other people things. He is starting to say, this is the real threat to the planet. We should fight it, right? So he's moved a little bit in the time we've seen him while still being a big old jerk in the end. But I think we have this clear arc to Cloud, and I think a really important part of addressing this game's story and seeing what's going on is looking at who Cloud is over time and how he becomes what he becomes. Say, how do you feel, Mr. Sephiroth? I thought you wanted a briefing. Our mission is to investigate an old Mako reactor. Apparently it's pronounced like Mako or Mako or something in the remake, but I pretend the remake doesn't exist, so we're going to be calling it Mako. There have been reports of it malfunctioning and producing brutal creatures. We did just see someone in the town. The one person I talked to, which was a mistake, I was just clicking buttons, say, is it true that Shinra created a monster? And I said yes, but we don't actually. I just said that, right? But here we see there have been reports of it malfunctioning and producing brutal creatures. First, we will dispose of those creatures, then we'll locate the problem and neutralize it. Brutal creatures? Where? The Mako reactor at Nibelheim. Nibelheim. That's where I'm from. I don't think we knew that yet. We have seen Cloud in his childhood home talking to his mom, who said, you need an older girl to take care of you. Which is actually, we should probably place that on our Cloud timeline. That's clearly after he grew up, right? That's not using his childhood sprite anymore. That's not from the Cloud era. That's from not from Baby Cloud, Promise to Tifa era. That's clearly from, say, somewhere around this era. Because it's definitely not the present, for reasons that will perhaps become clearer. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense to say to someone who's overexcitable militant dreams type. I'm actually not sure exactly when that moment happens. That's where I'm from. Hometown. So, sir, something strange just crashed into our truck. That would be our monster. Oh, I didn't have the FF7 thing in the side. My bad. I meant to put that there. Alright, sorry. Hopefully, yeah, it's fixed. Just trying to run multiple things. Yeah. Oh man, Sephiroth does a lot of damage. Cloud is 140 life. Flamethrower. Goodbye, Cloud. Sephiroth, 3000 damage. Okay, Sephiroth is stronger than us, and he has a cool katana. I really like parts in games where they do, whether they, and I prefer it if they insert it in gameplay than if they show it in cutscene, showing this character is doing things that are just way ahead of where you are in the game. I think that's a really neat way of showing what Cloud's about to say. I think it's a good way of inserting it. Sephiroth's strength is unreal. He is far stronger in reality than any story you might have heard about him. Incidentally, if Flamethrower had hit Sephiroth instead of us, I believe it would have done 0 damage. So, where do you come in? Me? I was mesmerized by the way Sephiroth fought. I was also knocked out, clearly. And then we reached Nibelheim. So here's my small town. Again, I think the backgrounds are really good and let us do different angles of towns. Sometimes we have a more top-down view, sometimes we see an entrance, and that lets the game choose to evoke different feels. And I think this kind of lower to the ground angle does a better job of making this look and feel like a more kind of welcoming town, a place you might be in, while the bird's eye view is perhaps better for letting you run between houses and figure out where you're looking. And I think the game does a nice job of choosing what graphics and what angles it wants to present those graphics from to make the game get the feel it wants to convey. I think it's a master together game in that regard. And something that really is often lost in an era where you always have camera control. because then you can't choose what the viewer is seeing in the same way. And also because they can look at it from so many angles, you basically end up usually copy pasting a lot of elements all around the walls and just making it look much more samey throughout. And that is partially where the era, especially as that was starting to happen, as we were starting to get better graphics, especially as we kind of made the jump from PS2 to PS3 era, you just got so many grays and browns just filling up everything. And I think, obviously, you look at the character models in FF7 and you're like, well, this looks like garbage. But I think a lot of the graphic design is actually, I'm not going to say better looking than what we have now, because obviously it isn't on any qualitative level. But except for one, I think design for what they had is often significantly better, and having the fixed camera makes it easier to do, but some games take advantage of it much better than others. Sephiroth, how does it feel? It's your first time back to your hometown in a long time, right? So how does it feel? I wouldn't know, because I don't have a hometown. That's an ominous thing to say. How about your parents? My mother is Genova. She died right after she gave birth to me. My father. Now, mother is Genova. Genova was the huge being, headless being, female being, in a quite large containment chamber. Did not seem quite human, but maybe the angles are throwing me off on size. Maybe she was human-sized. But strange thing to call your mother. But this fits with what we saw in Shinra headquarters. Sephiroth came, Sephiroth killed a whole bunch of people, and the containment chamber keeping Genova in it, the door was destroyed, and Genova was gone. So I think our safe assumption is Sephiroth may have reunited with his mother. And he laughs at his father, or the thought of his father. What does it matter? So we have a question. What's the fatherhood here? All right, let's go. And I think the motherhood is still an open question too. All right, let's talk to our two pals. Psst, you keep wandering around here and you'll get in trouble. So boring being on watch. You want to do what we always do? Shall we practice? Practice? Oh, you mean practice my pose. Does someone in Soldier always have to be careful about what other people think? How did it go? Nice pose. Well done. Was it like this? Good job. I really don't want to be in Soldier. The Mako smell is pretty bad here. I think we should think of Mako, like obviously raise the Mako prices, very much the feel of electricity prices, but smell, clearly much more oil. So just a combination of all the things that are energy in our world is kind of Mako, all of them wrapped into one. Let's go into town. Yo, wait a minute. Isn't that, the name of Sephiroth's mother? Yeah, good point, Barrett. I remember Genova. That's that damn headless spook living in the Shinra building. That's right. Barrett, would you please let us hear what Cloud has to say? You can ask questions later. No, this was a good question. This is a good question. Tifa, I was only... Okay, Cloud, continue. It's a reunion of childhood pals. I was really surprised with Tifa. Right, because she and Cloud come from the same place. We've seen Nibelheim before, but only the little well place where they made the promise. The town was quiet. Everyone must be staying in their houses, afraid to come out because of the monsters. No, maybe they're afraid of us. How many towns want to be occupied by military, even if they've come to clear the town? We leave for the reactor at dawn. Make sure you get to sleep early. Alright, but let's explore our hometown. This seems like a place worth going in each house and seeing what's up. All we need is one lookout, so you others get some rest. Oh, that's right. You may visit your family and friends. Some clever things are being done here I can't talk about yet. Man, I'm so nervous. How come? Look, you never know when a monster is going to show up, right? I heard Sephiroth was coming and got my camera ready. I want a shot of Sephiroth and a monster. Take my picture. I don't take pictures with nobodies. Ouch. Welcome. Hey, aren't you... Have I come here before? I don't remember. Now you're pissing me off. This don't matter, so get on with it. That's a weird little reaction. What happens if we go back in? I think nothing. Welcome. Oh, I think it's the same thing. Hey, aren't you? Yeah. We get the same thing. Have I come here before? I don't remember. Alright, so that's not getting us anywhere. That house doesn't mean anything to the story. Let's try to run past the guard. Try a different house. Ah, we should recognize this house. No, we shouldn't. Sorry, not the house I thought it was. Oh, you're with the Shinra. Welcome. Oh, I'm sorry. It's you, Cloud. I didn't recognize you. Shinra? Shinra? Soldier? Salsa? Good work, kids. Are you going to kill the monsters? Are you going to? Yeah. Tell them yeah. We don't get a response. Very sad. Alright, nothing to do here. But we actually got someone to recognize Cloud, which we weirdly hadn't gotten yet. Though we got the RU and then it cut out strangely. Cloud? Did you go into my house? Yeah. I thought you might be home. Because, you know, Cloud made her a promise that he was going to go become a first-class soldier, become, you know, as great as Sephiroth. Admittedly, that part hasn't happened. But, you know, wouldn't you come back and brag to the person you made a promise to about it? Cloud? Did you go into my room? Yeah. There's a piano here. Did you play my piano? Yeah, I jammed on it. How did this go? I forget. No, I don't have the sound on, so I'm not going to be able to make things out, but I'll mash some keys. You can see Cloud playing on his piano, or her piano, and that's all we got. Good jam. Actually, there's I mean, people will know this, but, because people know these things, but playing the right tune on that piano later gets you Tifa's ultimate weapon. Though not the weapon we will be enjoying. Now, this house we should recognize. This is my house. It has nothing to do with that incident 5 years ago. Alright, we can't go in my house either. Yo, wait, I want to hear. Yeah, Barretts knows what's up. Me too, it's been a long time, right? Tell us more. You saw your family, right? We want to talk about it. I don't know if you could call it a family. My father died when I was still very young. That's why my mom was living alone in this house. Yeah, I saw my mom. My mom, she was a vibrant woman, hadn't changed at all. But a few days later, she died. And that's why I think the last scene with the mom has to be around now. Because we know he's an adult, we know he went away for a few years, so this is kind of the only chance for that scene with her saying you should have an older girlfriend to have happened, and just a few days before she died. But when I saw her, she looked fine. Hi, Mom. Yes? Cloud? We look different. Welcome home, Cloud. Hi, Mom. Come, come, let me take a look at you. You look so handsome. with my beautiful hands. So, is this a soldier uniform? Mom, my. My, how you've grown. I'll bet the girls never leave you alone, and this is the scene we've seen. Not really. I'm worried about you. There are a lot of temptations in the city. I'd feel a lot better if you just settled down and had a nice girlfriend. I'm alright. You should have an older girlfriend, one that'll take care of you. I think that would be the perfect type for you. I'm not interested. Are you eating right? I'm alright. The company takes care of me. Cloud is not good at this kind of interaction. Is that so? You can't cook, right? I was worried sick about how you were doing. Cloud? You know, Cloud. Isn't that right, Cloud? I will always be your mother. Let's stop this. Yeah, I think it would be pretty painful to have stuff like that be your last interactions with your mom, where she's being enthusiastic and supportive and all you can give is kind of not reallys. And reminiscing about that, probably not something Cloud wants to be doing. Alright, I think that's all to do for now, so we'll head to our inn. Oh, what are you? Is Shinra here to get rid of the monsters? And who are you? I'm Zangan. I'm traveling around the world teaching children martial arts. I love the little hops in this game. I have 128 students all over the world. Good to know that a lot of these games' max stat is 255 or 256, because obviously however many bits, that's how much you could do. And I always appreciate when games just do numbers that are multiples of 2, just even here where it's not like they can write bigger numbers than 128, but where it's multiples of 2. Just because so much was limited by that for such a long time. In this town, a girl named Tifa is my student. We've learned why Tifa does martial arts, or how she got there. Did you say Tifa? Tifa has good sense. She'll be a powerful fighter. Oh, she will. It's going to take a little longer to get her there. Talk to the innkeep. The whole inn's booked up by Shinra for the night. Cloud? Is it you, Cloud? Must have been 2 years. Say, you've really moved up in the world, being under Sephiroth's command. We have moved up in the world, though it's unclear where we're coming from. Alright, let's see what Sephiroth's got to say for himself. What are you looking at? This scenery. I feel like I know this place. ... We have an early start tomorrow. You better get some sleep soon. Not gonna wake you up tomorrow. Wanted to talk to this guy. We're short 1 bed. Right, there are 4 of us and 3 beds. That's a shame. Alright, let's take a nap though. I've hired a guide to the Mako reactor. I've heard she's young. I hope we can rely on her. Wonder who that could possibly be. You will never guess. I'd try not to say leading things like that if I thought it was important or not obvious, but, you know, this is pretty obvious. Hey, the photographer's here. They don't want to take a picture of a nobody. They're here for Sephiroth. Think they'd let me take a picture. Once the guide gets here, we're heading out. Listen to me, Sephiroth, says Tifa's father, in case something happens. Now, I think we've briefly seen Tifa's father before, but we'll hold off talking about that. Trust me. I'll be alright, Dad, says Tifa. I have 2 men from Soldier with me. So we've only seen 2 sprites for Cloud. We've seen like Baby Cloud and Adult Cloud, and they just use Adult Cloud for his 16-year-old self. Tifa, however, gets 3 sprites. Baby Tifa, 16-year-old Tifa, 21-year-old Tifa. Clearly, she is the main character of the game. I have 2 men from Soldier with me. I'm Tifa. Nice to meet you. Tifa, you're the guide. That's right. I just happen to be the #1 guide in this town. It's too dangerous. I can't involve you in something like this. Cloud has so many lines like this. And I think lines like this, like Legend of Dragoon was when Sony tried to make a game so they could have an in-house version of Final Fantasy. And it's a decent game. I quite like it. But it's a very flawed game. And Dart has lots of lines like this to the female characters. The main character of that one is also repeatedly going, "It's too dangerous. You can't be involved in something like this." But in this one, it's part of Cloud being a big jerk. And in that one, it's not supposed to be that. They just think that's the kind of thing your male leads say because they ripped off every other RPG they could think of. That's a little harsh, but not that harsh. They clearly just tried to grab every trope from RPGs that had been successes and mash them in. But it means you have something where one person is saying something in one game because it fits the character and the flaws of the character. And in the other one, it's not supposed to be a flaw of his. The game isn't smartly enough written to realize that. And I think Legend of Dragoon, like, I enjoy the story. I like some of the characters. I think the gameplay's fun. And I think it's a stupidly written game, right? I think the game does not think through what it's doing with its characters and what it's doing with its story very well, and lands itself in some weird places because of that. And better written games and better done games like FF7, being the kind of overprotective person, though it's not really overprotective here, it's more that, that's a little overprotective. There's a bunch of things going on with Cloud, but there's more going on to it here. It is something that comes from the character rather than comes from the author, if that makes any sense. Like, there's so many times in stories, I don't have a good example coming to mind that I want to use. I have some examples coming to mind, but they're things I would not like to shout out for various reasons. But where there's a character who comes in and clearly delivers the words of wisdom, right? Clearly tells the lead, here is the truth of the situation. And those lines are clearly just being told to you by the author. The author wants you, the reader, to understand this about the story, and they are putting it in the mouth of specific characters, right? Those lines rarely come from, like, the obnoxious dweeb jerk who's the villain, or, like, a semi-villain, right? Those lines either come from the wise character or come with a swell of music, maybe, from a surprising character, but it's very clear when it's happening. It's very clear when the author is telling you something. And sometimes they put it in the main character's mouth, or in a character's mouth where it also makes sense for that character to say. Ideally, if it's a well-written story, the author is telling you things, but they are telling you things through characters that make sense to be telling you those things. But in poorly written stories, you get characters saying things that A, don't make a lot of sense for them to be saying, are not in character for them to be saying. And you could say, like, oh, this line doesn't fit with their previous lines, it's not in character. No, people contain multitudes, but there are lines that are clearly not in character. Clearly, it is the author inserting something through the character they want to tell you some information of something the author is telling you, yes, this is meaningful, this matters. And when that thought is dumb or poorly thought out, I get really turned off by a story. Because it's showing they are not really thinking about their characters. They are thinking about what they want to tell you, whether or not they can say that to you through the characters they've developed. And two, it tells you that the authors are just not thinking through things well, right? Their thoughts, their deep thoughts they're trying to convey are just kind of dumb. And the easiest way to avoid this is to not do much of it and have the characters speak for and as themselves and not do much authorial insert. But I'm okay with people doing it. I just don't want to start thinking the author of a story is an idiot when they start doing so. Or evil, right? Lots of things that are inserted as big moral values, I think, are incorrect and bad and harmful. And so that's a really easy way for me to get turned off a story. And Legend of Dragoon may not do all these offenses, but it veers really close to a lot of stuff. Because I think it's just kind of dumb. And it has some really good things going for it. And it's also just kind of a dumb game in a way that better RPGs aren't. All right, I've been way sidetracked here. Let's get back to this. We're not even going to finish all the flashbacks in this episode. That's a shame. It's too dangerous. I can't involve you in something like this. Then there's no problem if you protect her. Let's go. Mr. Sephiroth, please let me take one picture for a memento. By the way, Sephiroth clearly just a much more capable soldier than Cloud, not just because he has infinitely higher stats, but like Sephiroth wants to do the job and make sure it's done, and Cloud wants to go, "Ooh, I'm so excited, we're gonna have a big prestigious thing to do," right? Like, which is the attitude that goes along better. Now I'm thinking about random stuff about being a soldier. Two random totally asides here. One is they both, I think, come from the same studies. During World War II, a ton of studies were done of American troops. A ton of surveys were taken and published and stuff after about kind of what being a soldier consisted of, what traits made for effective soldiering, things like that. And a guy used them as a really interesting example of something about. Well, here's the story. A guy looked at those studies and is teaching a class. And he goes to the class, okay, so there's this big survey taken of World War II soldiers, this big study done. And it concluded that if we divide soldiers into those who came from urban backgrounds, cities, and those who came from rural backgrounds, farmlands, outside of cities, small towns, and it looked at which one self-described in surveys as having clearly higher satisfaction in the army than the other, right? Who adapted better to life in the trenches, life in combat, life at length, right? In uncomfortable, awkward, cramped conditions, right? Where we're also in constant threat during World War II. And it turned out that soldiers from rural backgrounds adapted better. Why is that? And the class readily comes up with a number of reasons, right? The class says, okay, they're much more used to living dirty, right? Not having regular kind of hygiene. They're more used to working with their hands and doing regular physical labor. So there are people who were better adapted to start living a highly physical and dirty lifestyle. And then he goes, okay, so I was lying. It turns out urban background soldiers adapted much better to being in warfare. Why is that? And again, it's not hard to come up with reasons. I'm sure you listening, if you're thinking about it, can come up with a whole bunch of reasons for both of these that I'm not coming up with here. And that's fine. The point is, it's really easy to fill in these explanations. So for urban backgrounds, much more used to living with other people, having to interact with lots of other people, having to follow more regular kind of codes of contact as you're interacting with more organizations and in more settings that involve human interaction, right? That's the main, I think, gist of why you'd think urban living would be better for becoming a soldier. I guess also you interact with people of lots more different backgrounds, so you're more used to being thrown into a situation where you're not surrounded by people who are the six people you're used to being surrounded by, the people as similar to you. You're more used to a variety of humans around you and how to handle living there and living there happily, right? We can come up with reasons for both. And if you listening had an instinct, urban or rural, one would make for better soldiers, it's really easy to come up with reasons why that might be the case. And what he ended up using this as an example of, now there is a truth to the question. It does turn out that people from rural backgrounds adapted worse and people from urban backgrounds adapted better. And I think that goes slightly against most people's instincts. I think most people's instincts would be rural in this regard, not urban. But either way, it's easy to come up with reasons for it. And the really big conclusion to draw, and I think the really important conclusion from it, is not about whether you want urban or rural backgrounds, maybe slight preference for urban, but it's not that big a deal. But it's when we're given information that kind of sounds right to us, we will fill in reasons and we will consider it the common sense explanation, regardless of whether there's actual evidence backing it. Humans are really good at grabbing onto something that sounds like common sense, that sounds like a good reason, and taking that as truth, and then locking it into our brains such that we're quite hard to dissuade from it. And I think one of the big indicators of lots of social science surveys, also some harder science surveys, and some kind of middle ground, if you want to consider economics, the dismal science, a middle ground, is we are really gullible to things that sound like common sense. And we have to be really careful about that, really careful to make sure there actually is evidence, because it is very easy to convince someone. And some of the more academically successful but stupider people I've known in my life are people that they don't know much, but they have been they're smart in a very academically successful way, but they don't actually know much, right? So when they're presented with a situation and they're given a common sense explanation that sounds clever, that gives them, that explains things, they will jump to it and they will hold on to it very strongly. And they don't have any evidence in their mind to test it against. They don't have knowledge, right? They have an ability to reason quickly and cleverly. And they are really susceptible to whatever you tell them with common sense. And I've had arguments with people where I brought up tons of evidence for something and it made no difference to them because they either just waved it off. They were like, that doesn't sound right to me, even though it was just very verifiably true. I'm not saying like stuff I believe that like is a bit sketchy maybe to some people. Obviously I believe it, but stuff that's just like very obviously verifiably true that just got waved off as an argument. And then I made a kind of, this is clever but doesn't actually hold up argument, and it immediately convinced the person. And it was just such a beautiful example for me of this in practice. But I think we got to be really careful about what we find as common sense. I've really gotten off track from FF7, but I want to say one more thing. I believe from that survey was one of the other big findings of that survey, and this actually is about what makes a good soldier. And sure, being from a rural background is a little worse than being from an urban background. But another big difference I think that survey found, and you can also look up other things, I found a few other really interesting things. These are just the ones that stuck with me, is people with morbid senses of humor, specifically with a sense of humor about death, tended to make braver and better soldiers. I don't know if that's held up in other wars. I mean, it was a really big sample of stuff taken with a ton of troops in, one of the, obviously, like, the biggest large-scale war in human history. So I don't have the data to say this is held up elsewhere or not held up. I just don't know. But it was really interesting that people with morbid senses of humor that were like regularly making jokes about dying tended to be braver, better soldiers. And to pretend this was relevant to what we're playing, let's note, Cloud is not that, right? Cloud is the eager beaver who's looking for glory and is not the okay, so any one of those things where you say, like, soldiers who did that, what we're saying is, on average, those were better soldiers in these specific ways. That does not mean any individual person is, right? And there's all kinds of stuff where some broad-scale sociological effect is taken to mean, to apply to individuals, and it means if we knew no other information about that individual, sure, we'd have a slightly lower estimation than another individual, but we have lots of other information about Cloud. This is not, what we should be judging him on. All right, let's get back to the game. Sorry for the offshoots. I do think that survey is really fascinating stuff, though. And I also think using it as examples of how we fill in reasoning to make the world make sense to ourselves and do so without actually checking ourselves for whether we're following any kind of evidence or reality. And that makes us very gullible to certain kinds of reasoning and sometimes propaganda is, I just think, a really important general takeaway for everyone about everything. So let's get back to the game. Mr. Sephiroth, please let me take one picture for a memento. Tifa, can you ask him for me too? Sephiroth eventually comes over, little reluctant. Cheese! The two minor soldiers. You're not important. You're not part of the picture. Cloud barely made it in. It's clearly just taken to be about Sephiroth. If he had stayed over on the right, they would have taken it of him and the two random guards. Great, thank you. I'll give each of you a copy once I get it developed. He'll probably forget about me. He was like, I don't take pictures of nobodies. Ooh, cutscene. A Mako reactor was built in Mount Nibel. And also, with the whole reactor things, it's clearly also supposed to invoke nuclear. It really is like all forms of energy. The cold air of the mountains of Nibel. It was no different. Now, this won't surprise you to know Nibelheim and Mount Nibel will be very important locations for flashbacks for Cloud's history and character. It gets harder from here. Follow me. Alright, we follow. And we get a battle. Hopefully we still have Sephiroth in the party. We do. Cloud's 140. 3 enemies. And he's smart. He casts a spell that will hit all of them. Bolt 3. We don't have Bolt 3. We have Bolt 1. Yeah. Didn't even use MP to do it. Sephiroth's OP. You heard it here first. Hey, Cloud survived his first fight, though. Congrats. Oh, the bridge. Doesn't sound great. That's not great. Problem with falling from heights is it should kill basically anyone, except, we've learned, if you land on flowers. But this doesn't look like a place where there are flowers to land on. So we're all dead. End of the game. Game over. Clearly I should have played this differently. It's so silly to me how, like, you clearly fall, like, 200 feet and you land on rock. And you're like, ow, I'm slightly hurt. Everyone's okay. Well, not quite everyone. Everyone seems alright. Can we get back to where we were? These caves are intertwined, just like an ant farm. Oh, and Sephiroth. There seems to be one person missing. It may sound cold, but we've got no time to search for him. We can't go back now, so we must go on. We'll travel together from here. I mean, it does sound cold, but also it is reasonable. Like, we all died, and yeah, there's, we're cut off from wherever they fell. There is not. We do not have the tools to deal with this. Bolt 3 again. I was hoping he'd show a different spell. We can actually go look at his equipment, so let's check it out in a moment. And steal his materia. You can't. They attached it to him. Because it's a flashback, there's no need for an end of battle experience screen, right? You can see Cloud's avatar in this picture is slightly different than his one now, so they did actually give him a second look for when he's 16. Ooh, I wish we had the preemptive materia. That seems useful. Nice plus to dexterity, general speed, and preemptive attacks are useful. He has revive, restore, earth, all, fire, all lightning, all ice. I always wonder when I look at this, why didn't they give fire all as well? You'll notice the materia is all mastered. And he has the Masamune equipped, and a gold armlet. Now, the Masamune is, I think, a pretty good weapon, right? It's got 99 attack, while ours is 18. This is an endgame weapon. But the gold armlet is actually just kind of a mid-tier defense weapon. Tough Ring is an endgame equipment, but it's kind of funny that he has endgame equipment in 2 slots, and then just, like, a random middle game equipment in the other. I don't know why I chose this path. I don't think it actually leads anywhere. It's just curious. Alright, so let's take the path the game actually wants us to take. And make it at least a little farther into this cutscene before I call it a video. What's this? A mysteriously colored cave. It must be the Mako energy. This mountain is especially abundant in it. That's why the Mako reactor was built here. Alright, can't go that way. I think we can at some later point in the game, but that's okay. It's not like we can collect items right now anyway. I don't know why I'm trying to run down side paths. Just waste a little time. Bolt 3 every time. Come on, man. Vary it up. It's so uncreative. Let's see Ice 3. We don't know what that looks like either. Earth 3. Note, I also don't get to control his moves, or I would be making him vary it up more. Revive, incidentally, as a materia, revives fallen characters. We haven't seen that one yet. Nor had we seen the preemptive one before. Now, I'm really excited for when we actually get to Nibelheim as a party, and Mount Nibel, because multiple of my favorite things to collect and start using, there's a whole bunch of valuable stuff there. It's a really good place for finding really valuable items that will last you a long time. And what's this? A Mako fountain. It's a miracle of nature. It's so beautiful. If the Mako reactor continues to suck up the energy, this fountain will dry up too. You are right. Tifa, already getting ready to be a member of environmental terrorists Avalanche. Materia. When you condense Mako energy, materia is produced. We learned where materia comes from. It's very rare to be able to see materia in its natural state. And this means all energy tends to flow from the same thing, right? This is not a game where like there's science and there is magic, right? Mako energy is being used by a company to be electricity for profits, things of that nature for extraction, but it can also be turned into materia and used for magic. By the way, why is it that when you use materia, you can also use magic too? You were in Soldier and didn't even know that? The knowledge and wisdom of the ancients is held in the materia, which must mean it's held in the Mako energy, right? Because if it's condensed to make materia. Anyone with this knowledge can freely use the powers of the land and the planet. That knowledge interacts between ourselves and the planet, calling up magic, or so they say. Magic, mysterious power. Ha ha ha. Did I say something funny? A man once told me never to use an unscientific term such as mysterious power. It shouldn't even be called magic. Well, I guess we do have a science-magic split. Ah, well, maybe that man was an idiot. I still remember how angry he was. Who was that? Hojo of Shinra Incorporated, an inexperienced man assigned to take over the work of a great scientist. So according to Sephiroth, Hojo is our scrub scientist who will never live up to a prior scientist. He was a walking mass of complexes. A Mako fountain. So this is where the knowledge of the ancients is. And we continue walking. I think I should probably call it about now. I'm trying not to let episodes run too long. I know these are, a while to watch, and everyone watching it has already played FF7, so I'm sure a bunch of it drags quite a bit. I actually feel good about the times I go on, 15-minute random rants about whatever, because it provides something to the experience you probably don't have in your normal runs. But I'm gonna save state because I can't save properly here, and we're gonna